I bet you're wondering why I have a picture of Scott Mendelson behind me that says you are blocked. Yeah, I got blocked by Scott Mendelson about 2 or 3 weeks ago, maybe a month. I don't know. I don't really pay attention. This article came up about Ghostbusters, and I had to cover it. I wanted to talk about it because I do love Ghostbusters. So without further ado...
Is this true?
Yes, it's true. This man has no dick.
Yeah, that works.
I like
all right.
that.
Okay. All right, moving on.
Hey, what about Tulip?
Here we are, ladies and gentlemen, Forbes.com. We're going to take a look at this article from Scotty Mendelson, and I'll give you my thoughts, and then I'm going to get back to watching my Lions wrap up this horrible campaign and finish out their loss to the Green Bay Packers. Box office. Afterlife proves foreign moviegoers don't care about Ghostbusters. This, of course, as I said, by Shill Scott Mendelson, and even though he tries to, he's almost trying to be objective in this, but at the same time, he still has to go to bat for Paul Feig's 2016 Ghostbusters that was a complete and utter dumpster fire and failure in every stretch of the imagination, and prop that up compared to Afterlife, which all the critics, you know, they hated on it because it erased 2016 from continuity when it never was in the continuity because it was set in a different universe. And Paul Feig, well, all the original characters came back. But dipshit, they weren't playing their own characters. They were all playing somebody else. Sony's Ghostbusters Afterlife arrives on electronic sell-through. Mind you, this was written on the 4th. Today's the 9th. It's 5 days ago. I love Ghostbusters, and I have an incredible amount of disdain for Scott Mendelson and his shitty takes. This morning, a relatively successful theatrical release, the Legacy sequel, directed by Jason Reitman, son of Ghostbusters director Ivan Reitman, and the guy who directed Juno, the young adult, and Frontrunner, penned by Gil Keenan, the guy who wrote Monster House, opened in November with a $44 million before ending up with $122 million in unadjusted domestic gross. However, it only earned $61.3 million overseas, giving it a current $184.7 million worldwide cume. That's not bad on a COVID curve, plus 15%, puts the domestic cume at $140 million. But it's still below the $126,229 global cume of Ghostbusters Answer the Call from the summer of 2016. While Afterlife only cost $75 million to answer the call's cost $144 million, the result arguably shows that not all American pop culture nostalgia translates overseas.
No way!
Now, to Scotty's point about this not translating overseas, a lot of countries, especially China, don't allow things with ghosts and such like that because they're communists and they're weird. And they don't like that supernatural stuff over there because they're, again, communists and they're very fucking weird and their human rights policies are garbage. But we're not talking about that right now because we'll let companies like Disney, you know, suckle that teat.
Who's the asshole?
As much as they want. Some of these movies don't translate over there. Ghostbusters is one of those movies to where I can understand why the worldwide box office is a little bit lower, and it doesn't make it any less of a success story here, because he's trying to say that Answer the Call, well, that made more money overall. You have to look at the way that movie was received, comparatively speaking to this one. Who was bitching about Answer the Call? The fans, because the fans were shit on from the word go. Nobody wanted to see these idiots, and it doesn't matter that they're women, they're unfunny idiots, written by a man who has no idea what he was doing. He had no place in that genre. Yeah, dude, go direct another Bridesmaids movie. Do something that actually works for you, you know? And it was rejected because of women was the stupidest narrative. And people like Scott Mendelson are the ones that push that narrative on people like you and I. And most of you watching this video have been victims of marketing like that. And I don't want to use the term, but I have to use the term, the woke marketing, because that's what it is. It's marketed to appeal to a certain sect of the population. The problem being that sect of the population doesn't spend the money that these people, these professionals that market towards them, want them to spend. They simply do not spend the money because they do not have the money to spend. The people that have the money to spend are people like you and I. We have the money to spend. They don't want our money because we don't fit the narrative of what they think or what they want their desired audience to look like. That's the problem. You can't market a movie to purple-haired third-wave intersectional feminist land whales with half their head shaved, a bull ring in their nose that make, $200 a week. They don't spend money on things like this. They go on Twitter because it's free and they complain about the patriarchy and cis hetero white males, wage inequality, racism. If they lived in another country, simply voicing those opinions would be a death sentence for them, or a one-way ticket to one of those camps like the Chinese are so fond of putting the Uyghur Muslims in. So before Scott Mendelson and people like him, before you allow them to shame you for simply stating your opinion on what you want to see or don't want to see, just remember exactly why they're doing it and who's paying them to do it. Ghostbusters Answer the Call was, of course, Paul Feig and Katie Dippold's remake of Ghostbusters, released in the summer 2016. And we'll go into that. This paragraph really brings a lot of this to the forefront of why these people were pushing this movie so hard. It's based on political leanings, which in entertainment is ridiculous. It is utterly ridiculous. But I want to read this paragraph first and then I'll give you some more commentary. Ghostbusters, released this summer 2016, amid a ridiculous amount of online hand-wringing over its gender swap cast. You don't need me to remind you of the outcry and real-world discourse even then GOP presidential candidate Donald Blumpf signing. I bet you it really hurts him to have to even type the 45th president's name. I guarantee you Scott probably pounds his fists on his tiny little fists on his desk and he's like, Jesus, Blumpf, why do I have to type your name, Blumpf? How the mere notion of casting 4 female sketch comedians in an NYC set paranormal comedy, as opposed to the original, which cast 4 male sketch comedians in the same, became essentially proof that online trolls and SEO-driven media could impact the online discourse and thus media-driven narrative about a given film. However, the film still grossed $126 million from a $46 million debut, which was A, 61% more than Sandler's like-minded Pixels from the previous summer, and B, more than any straight-up feature comedy released that year. Alas, it only earned $100 million overseas. So, looking at this now, looking at this paragraph, kind of breaking down Scotty's ridiculous, long-winded explanation for women good, men bad, I'm a paid shill. The mere notion of casting 4 female sketch comedians in an NYC set paranormal, as opposed to, you're comparing Dan Aykroyd, Bill Murray, Ernie Hudson, and Harold Ramis. The comedic genius that exists in those 4 men. 2, Leslie Jones, Kate McKinnon, Kristen Wiig, and Melissa McCarthy. Ladies and gentlemen,
now comes the part where we throw our heads back and laugh. Ready?
Ready!
There ain't no comparison there. There's no similarities there. The only similarities there are that Hudson and Jones both happen to be black.
That's racist!
The humor is so far this, and I hate to say this, it always brings up the age-old argument, are women really funny?
Man.
And I'm not going to elaborate on that. We've talked about the topic before in a objective manner, and I'm not saying that from a place of malice towards female comedians. But those 4 women are not funny. Kate McKinnon is not funny at all. Melissa McCarthy, the more weight she's lost, the less funny she's got. Because her only shtick before was, look at me, I'm a big fatty, and I'm going to do big fatty thing. That was her entire shtick. She wanted to be female Chris Farley, except Chris Farley actually knew how to do comedy and humor, and she's just like, I'm fat, I'm a woman, you have to laugh or you're a sexist. That's basically Melissa McCarthy. Leslie Jones is abrasive. They wrote her, and this is funny, and Milo Yiannopoulos, the whole thing with him and her on Twitter. I don't condone any of the attacks on her based on her ethnicity, because there's no reason for that ever. For people to resort racial epithets against actors. Racist attacks are never all right. Never. I would never condone something like that. I think a lot of this was overblown deflection to take away from how bad the movie was. I mean, the villain of the movie, his entire motivation to be a villain was that he was basically a real-life incel. He was a failure, and they purposely made him a white male so they could make him look more pathetic. Chris Hemsworth in that movie, oh hey look, he's hot, dumb, and muscular, and Kristen Wiig wants to fuck him. Okay, so there's your the entire crux of her character. Leslie Jones, like I said, they wrote every stereotype they could and said, here's your character. And
you've got to do better.
See, Kate McKinnon was just annoying. Kristen Wiig was Kristen Wiig from every other movie she was in. Melissa McCarthy was just fat ego boom, and then Leslie Jones was hi, I'm stereotype. Chris Hemsworth was the dumb hot guy, and the villain, who I don't even remember his name, the actor who played him, angry, mediocre white guy. That's if you look, it was basically written by SEOs. This was written by SEOs because it's like, what's a talking point, a feminist, intersectional feminist talking point online? Mediocre white male. Mediocre white male has opinion. Mediocre white male does this. Mediocre white male does that. Any intersectional feminist that you argue with, if you are a white guy, will use that at you. You're just a mediocre white man. And it's like, you could be a Fortune 500 CEO, and unless you bend the knee to wokeness, they will hate just for who you are. Even if they're white too, you're still a mediocre white man to them, because they're, on the victim oppression list, white guys are way down at the bottom, and, the victimhood Olympics, white women. And this is the thing, suburban white women want that slot so bad. That's why they all champion BLM and all this other, Marxist garbage so much, is because they feel left out of the oppression Olympics. They're not a minority.
Well, that's not the case here.
So they need to interject themselves into it.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for them.
We can go back to the article now. Just wanted to give you my thoughts on that paragraph and to kind of put a bow on it. So 5 years later, Ghostbusters Afterlife gave fans their own Force Awakens, which again is a false equivalency. This movie was not hollow. The Force Awakens was a carbon copy of A New Hope, with race and gender swaps, obviously, and horrible writing and shitty new characters that got no development and nobody cared about. Afterlife made you feel something. I genuinely never felt anything with any of the new Star Wars movies except apathy, anger, and disgust. Ghostbusters Afterlife, I went to see it twice in the theater. Because it's a movie that deserved to be seen twice in the theater, and I'm going to buy it. To equate this to The Force Awakens really does a disservice to Ghostbusters Afterlife, and it really tips Scotty's hand at what his real motives and objectives are in his writing, in his coverage, and the slant that is in his coverage. See, so we got our own Force Awakens, starring McKenna Grace, Carrie Coon, Finn Wolfhard, Paul Rudd. The 30-year later sequel ignored the 2016 remake, which makes sense since it's not set in the same continuity. See, he had to put that in there because the line in the movie is like, nobody's seen a ghost in 30-some years, which totally wiped out the 2016 one. That's all right, because it was a shitty movie. You can say it. It has nothing to do with the fact that it was women. It was a shitty movie, and offered a coming-of-age adventure that portrayed the events of the first Ghostbusters as a kind of generational pop mythology. I'd argue the movie worked well enough on its own terms. Grace is terrific, Rudd is charming, and Coon benefits from the film's willingness to go raw with family estrangement to survive a third-act fan bait fest. It worked for Ghostbusters fans and folks who just wanted a funnier and present-day riff on Stranger Things or Super 8. Two things I've never seen 1 second of. However, even with a course correction akin to The Incredible Hulk after Hulk and Man of Steel after Superman Returns, Ghostbusters Afterlife earned just $61 million overseas. So he calls the third act a fan bait fest when it showcased the whole movie was built on the precipice of this next generation learning how to become, Ghostbuster without standing on the shoulders of the original characters. And by that I mean propping up the movie. The originals were involved, absolutely. Their fingerprints are all over everything, but they didn't come into the movie really full force until the third and final act. So this gave you an entire movie to build up these characters and tell you why you should care about them. Granted, the sheriff's daughter, she needed a little more development, and so did Podcast. But I enjoyed their characters. Never once was I like, ugh, is this scene almost over? Now, I've seen the 2016, I've watched it twice, 2 or 3 times I've watched it. And the first time I sailed the high seas after it came out, and I was like, I'm glad I didn't pay for this. Once, I believe I watched it with my wife. I'm like, hey, I need you to watch this with me because I genuinely want to know what you think. She hated it. And she's not a huge Ghostbusters fan, but they're a big enough part of my life. The movies, the original movies, and my son loves them. He didn't stay interested. And I objectively sat there and let him watch it. He couldn't maintain his interest in the 2016 one. He thought it was boring. This is a shot that Mendelson is taking again at, calling it fan bait. Yet Scotty Mendelson is someone who, loved The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi and vehemently defends the Disney movies until Rise of Skywalker, when you could no longer defend those movies with any sort of rationale or common sense thinking and not look like a complete lunatic by defending garbage. This is just more shillery from somebody who, for 30 years, I'm sure at the beginning of his career, he was doing actual work and not just shilling like he is now. Scott is the king of the shills. $229 million worldwide for the Kristen Wiig, blah, 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 rest of the cast, comedy. Would have been okay on a budget closer to McCarthy's Spy, $235 million on a $65 million budget in the summer of 2015. I never saw Spy. I've never been a Melissa McCarthy fan. I'm like, I don't see the appeal of just this unfunny fat lady trying to be funny. It doesn't work for me. They said the budget was, I believe, $144 million for the 2016 movie. That movie lost, I believe it was around, $175, $200 million? So that budget didn't take into account the marketing and promotional stuff like that. And also, they projected that movie was going to make, I believe it was the opening weekend, was projected to be like 100-something million, and it made 40-something. That movie was a bomb in every sense of the word. And we'll look at the scores on it and everything like that at the end of it. Rotten Tomatoes only works in certain metrics, and this be one of them. So we'll take a look at that too. But I want to finish up this article. $229 for the comedy would have been okay in a budget closer to Spy, as opposed to Jurassic World. Had the film performed as expected for fantasy franchise flicks, we'd be looking at a $371 million cume. Again, Scott is speculating to try to build the 2016 one up while he's been tearing down Afterlife this entire article. That'd be on par with Batman Begins, $371 million, and Star Trek, $385 million. I believe they're talking about Jar Jar Abrams' Star Trek. I've never watched any of those either. The Ghostbusters IP is specifically American pop culture, or at least to the extent anyone has fawning the fantasy saga of my childhood nostalgia for it. And see, this is the thing. Again, he's insulting you for liking something that you liked when you were a kid. He's insulting you, and this is what they do. They try to gaslight you and shame you for liking things that you liked as a child, which is completely wrong. I can't say it, and I know you guys have heard me say that a lot, and I'm going to say it because that's exactly what they're doing to you. They're gaslighting you into thinking you're wrong. You're not wrong to dislike this entertainment. You're not a misogynist, you're not a sexist, you're not a racist, you're not a bigot, you're not an istophobe of any kind. Not unlike Solo, 214 domestic, but just 394 million worldwide. Hashtag Solo lost money. North American moviegoers showed up in respectable numbers while overseas audiences did not. When Sony doubled down on the IP, bringing in Ivan's Son, making it a reverential remake of Ghostbusters, emphasizing the iconography, etc., the overseas grosses, COVID aside, substantially decreased. COVID aside, they'll blame COVID for every shitty movie that loses money. It was done last year, but it got delayed. The 355, it's an all-female led action spy movie that looks like it's going to be the next big bomb. It opened this past weekend. I can't wait to see how much money that doesn't make, and the list of excuses that they blame Omicron for and COVID is going to be blamed for this movie failing. But, well, it wasn't COVID that caused Ghostbusters Afterlife to make less money. Anything to tear that down and build up the 2016 one, right, Scotty? Some of that downturn was due to COVID variables, even while Venom 2, James Bond 25, and Halloween Kills were doing just fine worldwide, but Afterlife still grossed 66% of its box office in North America alone. That's the reverse of a conventional theatrical performance for a fantasy franchise flick. Moreover, it earned 40% less overseas than the last Ghostbusters movie. There we go again. Showing that some of the overseas interest was in the idea of a big-budget sci-fi comedy starring McCarthy and other well-known comedic actresses, as opposed to the fidelity to the IP. No, no, no. Sony applied the right lessons from Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle, which looked appealing to those with no interest in the brand. Unlike Man of Steel or Incredible Hulk, which made 180-degree course corrections, but on the same budget only to earn about equal grosses, Ghostbusters Afterlife was made cheaply enough to be a hit with identical results. And instead of saying a modest budget, or it was made on a more of a modest budget than Answer the Call, which was a bloated budget, a lot of reshoots because it was terrible. He's got to tear it down, though. Like I said, I want you to pay attention to these articles, because even if you've read it before someone else, I want you to know that this you really need to dissect this stuff. And I'm not trying to be condescending, but if we're going to turn the tide in this culture war, ladies and gentlemen, we have to do our due diligence as culture warriors. That Tom Rothman and friends were smart enough to only spend $75 million on Afterlife meant they accounted for, even in non-COVID times, the possibility that audiences outside of North America wouldn't care about a Ghostbusters Legacy sequel any more than they cared about a Han Solo origin story or a LeBron James Space Jam sequel. A new Legacy earned $92 million overseas versus $140 in '96's Space Jam, which I saw in the theaters. That's how old I am. Ghostbusters grossed $229 domestic, $53 million overseas in '84. Ghostbusters 2 earned $112 million domestic, $103 overseas in '89. Jokes about broadening the international scope aside, the Spengler kids are going to South Korea. The theatrical sequel must not be so expensive that it can't afford to be ignored again outside of North America. Because the pretty fun Afterlife proved what the pretty funny Answer the Call merely implied. Overseas audiences don't care about Ghostbusters. Okay. Because the pretty fun Afterlife proved what the pretty funny Answer the Call merely implied. And that's the part of the statement that I want to highlight right there. Why on earth does Mendelson continue to find it necessary to denigrate the better movie?
He was a retard.
In the grand scheme of things, this is our buddy Scotty Boy up here, who, again, blocked me on Twitter. This guy has thousands and thousands and thousands of followers, and here I am, little me, 604 followers on Twitter, and 917 subscriber YouTube channel, and thank you to each and every one of my subscribers. But no, I just think people like Scott need to be taken to task. And I called him out on Twitter for it, and he didn't like it, so he blocked me. And I don't even think I know I screenshotted it at one point. Honestly, now it's your turn. What do you guys think? Do you think that Scott Mendelson is truly being unbiased with his reporting here? And I know that Ghostbusters Answer the Call did make more money than Afterlife. I'm not denying that fact. But the last two things I want to show you here before we wrap it up. Here's Ghostbusters Answer the Call on Rotten Tomatoes. I really just want you guys to look at this. 74% from critics. Let's go over here. Top critics, 71%. Audience, 49%. It's it's a shit movie. I mean, 26 critics were brave enough to say it was rotten, which for them is a lot. It truly is. Now on the other side of that, we have Ghostbusters Afterlife. 62% from critics, 95% from the audience. And generally, I would look at this and Ghostbusters Answer the Call and be like, okay, so the audience is pretty much going to be correct in this. The critics are bought and paid for, this movie. And I know you're saying, well, why is the critic score only 62% on this one? Well, the critic score is only 62% on this because the critics did not want this movie to succeed. They wanted to pan it. They wanted to keep people, they wanted to give it bad reviews to keep people from going to the theater to see it, because this erases 2016. This erases the intersectional feminist agenda movie. This negates the movie that, proudly supported Hillary Clinton in 2016. When Sony specifically, I believe it was Tom Rothman, told them not to get involved in the politics end of it, they did it anyway, and Feig did it. So don't let Paul Feig play, victim, and people like Scott Mendelson gaslight you. through garbage tier journalism. Tout, I have 30. You've been doing this for 30 years, yeah. And you look at the places you've written for, like the Huffington Post, Salon, yeah, the Huffington Post, because they're just a wonderful bastion of journalistic integrity, right? So that's it, ladies and gentlemen. Let me get this picture of Scotty Mendelson off here. God, I can't even deal with that. That's fucking hideous. So, ladies and gentlemen, now it's your turn to let me know what you think in the comment section below. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, please opine, leave your comments, but refrain from being mendacious. There's your word of the day, mendacious. Unless you're one of my trolls, then proceed as you will. Also, ladies and gentlemen, after you leave that comment, please remember to share the video, as well as not just me, but your other favorite content creators. We appreciate that, as well as it greatly helps us spread our work, our content far and wide. And that's something that you can do for free to help us. And we greatly appreciate that. And that's why we put out the content we do, to entertain you and inform you. And I do appreciate everybody watching here at the channel. Tony, myself, Red, Vinny, we really appreciate it. I have a wonderful group of people that work with me here at the channel, and they're just as much a part of this as I am, and I truly appreciate them. And all of my subscribers, you guys and gals, make this happen. So thank you. And don't forget, after you share the video, if I've earned it, if today is the day that I have earned it, please press the button, subscribe to the channel, join us. We're on our march towards 1,000, and the content, ladies and gentlemen, is only going to get better from here on out. We will bring more production value as soon as I get set up in my full-time studio, and things are back to normal in the household. So much more that I want to do than sit in a chair and talk to you all. I want to be up moving around, doing stuff and skits. When you subscribe, you will not be disappointed. I promise you that. And if you do subscribe, be sure to ding the bell for notifications so you're notified every time we upload a new video like this one, or go live with one of our 2 scheduled weekly live streams every Monday night, 8:35 Eastern. Join myself, Tony ToneDef of the Clown World Review, Red Gaze, the Assistant Regional Manager, and Vinnie Tardamella of Vinnieart right here for Monday night Going In Raw. And also Wednesday nights, join myself and Tony ToneDef, my co-host with the most, my brother from another mother, for Going Rogue at 9 p.m. Eastern until 11. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, our 2 anchor shows right here on the channel. We also have all these pop-up live streams, random videos like this. That's it, folks. I'm done. Before you leave, though, if you've done all the other YouTube things, do us one more favor. I know I ask a lot, but I give a lot as well, ladies and gentlemen. Just like you give me your time, I give you mine. It's a mutual reciprocity here at the channel. And do us a favor and just bitch slap that like button. You know, like it stole something, smack it, flip it, rub it down, whatever you want to do to it, just smack that like button. And that's it, gang. I'm Itepukuian of The Place to Be Reviews. I've been here with all of yous. If I don't see you, have a great day, a pleasant tomorrow. I could do this all. And remember,
it's better to burn out than to fade away.